One final thing, and I know that I've extended my presentation into the Q&A session, but we've been been liberal with the questions as well. So I'm going to go into the gradebook. Okay, so a few things about the gradebook. So we can have a unified view of all activities in the course, or as I showed before, we can have a grid view of them. So this is more like an Excel kind of format. So all the activities are basically columns in here, and I can grade directly by basically just clicking there and adding an 80 or 100, if that's how I want to do it. I can, well, here, where's the, so I can, let's say that I have an in-class activity. This would be kind of similar to what your colleague was talking about, something that has points, not necessarily a check mark. So if I add an item here, I can say, okay, this is going to be a lab activity. This thing is just blocking me. This is a lab activity. This is actually visible to students, and this is going to happen on the 31st. This actually has points, and the maximum score is 20. And this is going to be, let's say, presentation. Okay, that's it. So once I do that, then I can just grade directly from here, and I can say 18, 16, oh, 26 now, 17. You get the idea, right? So as I just type in, it will go, from student to student. Now, another tool is, sometimes, I have to grade in here. Sometimes the test automatically calculates the grade, but sometimes I want to create more complex grade calculations. I want to have the average of the tests, by the, or, add that to the average of the assignments. So I can create a calculation. So I click calculation, and this is sort of similar to an Excel formula, not as complicated, right? So I can say, okay, I want to average out all assignments, right? And then I want to add the average of all the presentations, so those are in-course activities. And actually, I would like to, and so I've added some parentheses in here. And I want to basically make that, let's say, that's going to be 50%, right? So I basically take those averages, multiply that by 0.5, and then I can add the total of all my exams, right? That might not make sense in the course, but you get the idea. We can add averages, totals, minimums, maximums. We can actually add a variable, so we can add a specific activity. So this activity plus the average of all the other activities, and we can basically create very sophisticated calculations in here. Then validate whether or not that's actually going to create a number. Then click save. Now these calculations, they can be shown to students, or you can have those be there just for you, right? So so you can see how students are. In this case, it's not adding, all the activities I selected have basically nothing in there, but you can use that for your own reference. It has been added into the grade book. Now that does not mean that that's the final grade for the course. So the overall grade, as you can see on the left-hand side, is automatically calculated for students, and I can set how I want to calculate that by clicking edit. So I can either assign weights to different categories inside my course. So I could say, in this case, I have presentations are worth 0, discussions are 30, tests are 30, and then attendance is just 10%. Or I can basically assign a percentage value to each individual activity or column or in my course. So I can say, that calculation actually, that is not going to be used for the final grade of the student, right? So here is how I basically organize how my grades are going to be shown back to students.
Is there kind of a grade book wizard or something to walk people through that first time you're building?
So the first time that you log in, and I have done this a while, so it did not show up, but every time you log in for the first time, you'll see tooltips, and they'll appear. So this is how you add a grade. This is how you add a calculation. When you first come into your grade book, right here, you will have a message saying, if you have not set up the final grade for your course, this is how you do it, right? Now, notice that on the bottom right side, there's always a little question bubble in here. So every time you click on that, it's going to take you specifically to that item where you're working, and it's going to give you comprehensive, instructions on how to work that particular area of the system. So right now I'm in the item list, right? In cases where it's probably required, we actually have videos in here that will kind of guide you through the process.
Now the student, like the same, you do the assignment category, right? The percentage on the assignment.
Yeah.
Does the student see that? Do they see what the assignments?
Yes.
They see, oh, this is 20% of my grade. Okay.
Yeah, so when students go into their grade book, they will see all the different grades that they have, all the grades that they already have been posted, and they can see the final grade. When they click on the final grade, that will show them how the final grade is calculated. And it will show all the items within that final grade calculation, so they can see where that grade came from. Right?
Oh, but they won't see it before. So my question is, when they're about to do the assignment, before they do it, will they see?
Oh, this is 10% of your final grade? No,
okay.
no, that's a good suggestion though.
Yeah, it's typically held in the syllabus, and we also have we're working on grade prediction stuff as well. So part of this is predictor for some of the core analytics that will show students line stuff like you continue your average level of engagement and whatever you'll end up as a B. The lower you'll be a C, and if you can increase on these three things today. So we're starting to build out the ability for students to have greater awareness, but also kind of gamify the system. Like I need to get an 85 on this quiz in order to be here there. So I think that kind of plays to the attention of students being more aware.
Yeah, so I'm logged in here as a student, and as I said before, the interface is almost identical to the instructor. Now with a few differences, right? So as a student, I have some important items in here because these are things that I've missed. So they automatically kind of float up to the top. These are due dates that I did not meet, right? And I can just be a procrastinator and say, I don't want to look for that, right? Bit of a flashback there to my life. Yeah. So this is a test. Now grades, I can always go into my grade section, but if I have something that's graded that's been recently posted, I can always look at my grade here. Oops, I don't like that. So let me hide that. So let's say the student is going over this in like a coffee shop or something, they can click, see it, and then hide it. They don't want to see those red spots in there probably. But in other courses, I'm actually, doing great. So this is just like we get as instructors, we get a notification that students are probably falling behind. Students get the same nudges. So they can either be positive, like in this case, they're doing great. But sometimes they might get some nudges. Hey, you haven't logged into this course for a while. Or, hey, we're looking at your activity level and everyone else is working really hard and you haven't logged in, right? And you haven't really participated as much as the rest of students. One of the things that we understand is that especially when you're taking a completely online course, there's a lot of things that you can't see that are going around. Right? When you're in a face-to-face traditional kind of course, you can see, students falling asleep in the back. Some of them are asking questions, but you can see kind of the level of engagement that your peers are having with the course. When you're online, you basically lose all those items. So we want to highlight those to students. So hey, everyone else is really working hard, and you're kind of not there, you know, what's going on? So if the student clicks on how am I doing, they get, hopefully, you know, they can see now, again, this is a very limited course, but they can see here the hours that this student has spent in the course, you know, compared to other students. I can actually offer other students help, right? I can say, you know, my grades are better, or I've been doing this, or, you know, we can get together for study sessions if you guys want.
Where does that notification go?
So this one goes in my screen, but it also pops up in my mobile application. And of course, I can always, you know, set the screen notifications and my email notifications. In this case, I don't have any emails, but I could say, you know, send me when there's new grades.
So you wanted to know where that help was, where we need to
Yeah,
set
when
it.
the student offers help to their classmates, where would another classmate or the
It
instructor?
will appear in their streams. Like Jorge sent this message to you guys, kind of like a message.
It seems like this is like a really awesome application for like a phone and for iPads. How much energy is BlackBoard putting towards? I mean, is this kind of like one of the things on the top list to make sure that it's always available for?
Yes, I mean, we develop with mobile first in mind. Because really students, what they do, and this again, this is a result of the research that we did with students. They wake up Monday morning, the first thing they do is they do this. I mean, I do that too. I'm 41 years old, but
I usually hit mine because my alarm's on it then.
you hit it.
Yeah.
So we understand that this is where it starts. It can finish here, right? But this is where their life is, right? This is where everyone's life basically is nowadays, right? So everything has to start from that perspective. So even though we like, I mean, I certainly understand that we have been teaching for a while. So when we're creating courses, we want to like have an activity here and a content item there, and then this and that test, and we want to follow this kind of structured, linear sort of approach to course building. In reality, students are just going to look at the notification and try to act on that directly, right? So we're trying to kind of merge those kind of two worlds together. So, but we do, every time we build something, how is it going to work in this thing, right? Yes.
So this is a student view right here.
Right now, yes.
Okay. So I understand that I'm not in instruction and in registration. So
Sure.
I understand the instructors putting in assignments when they're due, that kind of thing. Can the student go to their calendar on here and say, you know, I have an assignment within 2 days. I need to remember to go to the library 2 days before that, whatever.
Okay.
Can they add stuff to their calendar on their own, like their own, that only they see?
Yes. So,
Okay.
so this is the same due date, right? So this is the due date view. I see everything that I have to do here. I can also add an event to my calendar, right? And then, you know, basically it's my personal calendar. I'm not teaching anything. And then I can say, you know, repeat this or just like any other calendar. Now, we understand that not all students, but a lot of them, their first encounter with time management and calendar applications is going to be this, right? So we try to make it as simple as possible, but also, again, we want to make this a way for them to manage their schoolwork, their activities.
So like, for instance, you know, when a graduation application, they put that deadline in on their own calendar, they have to turn it in. So will it come up in their stream then that
Yes.
day? Okay.
Yes, just like course events, it will like, hey, you know, in the following days, it will first appear coming.
So they can add all that stuff, so it shows in their stream, but obviously nobody else can.
Because it's all exactly.
Would the admin like be able to like say like, hey, last day to drop a class, blast into everybody's calendar?
Yes.
Like, it would do that?
Yes. Yes. So administrators can say, this is the last day in which you can drop. And that will actually be in the very top as an important message. In there. It will go.
It can still be ignored, right?
You can always click dismiss, but
Let's
yes,
go back to the grade book real quick.
definitely.
Like, what if I want to do a batch grading of a particular assignment? Instead of having like back on the last one, it looked like you had to click on each student, put a grade in, is there an opportunity to just have all those grades open and just go from one to the next to the next?
So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to say that right now we can have a batch update of grades.
I think you're asking for like a quick grading workflow, like you want to focus on one assignment, just roll through it
So
fast.
that's what I showed before. You can just like type
But you
it
still have to
directly.
click on each one first.
You can
and
hotkey it.
You have to do this and this.
Tab enter.
Is it enter or tab? Go to the next one down.
Enter. Once you enter,
So you can hit 20 there.
Yeah, you can 10 key the whole thing, 10, 20, 15.
So you can do that and go from one to the next to that.
Which in old Blackboard it didn't. It was really horrible. Like click, like this is old version's old, but you're like click.
it was not horrible.
I thought it was horrible. I was like, a lot of
I just
systems
like the
I'm like,
tab feature. I like that.
yeah, like let me
All of
move
them.
through this quickly.
Yeah, so what I'm doing right now is just basically typing in directly. So this is 4, enter, 7, enter, 9, enter, and that is moving me forward. Now, the in like bulk uploading of grades, it is not in here yet, but that is something that we're looking into. So in the previous version of Blackboard, we use Excel files. In this new version, I don't know if we're going to use the same format or we're looking into other formats, but you know, it might come.
I think it's really like you go somewhere outside of your normal day and you take like records somewhere from a lab or an on-site or something, and then you're like, I can match up. Well, this happens every now and then, but we're also investing in an experience. Did you show the instructor yet?
No.
So we first released the mobile app and Collaborate and this, and we continue to build features. So the next thing we're building, we just started probably 6 or 8 months ago, is a dedicated instructor application. So like you have an app on your phone that's just your persona, like living and breathing in a course. And so we're gonna, as we build that out, we'll put things that like make your grading experience really great from a mobile application. So maybe you're like 10 of 5, whatever that is. But this persona-based application where your experience in the course is really how you want to do things. Students manipulate and use the gradebook very differently than an instructor does. So that application was released about July of last year, and then we continually do.
It's out there. It has messaging, calendar, things like that. But one of the things that I'm really excited about, and because this is very relevant for community colleges, you know, some community colleges only have a big selection of tech courses like welding and things like that are not necessarily built for an online environment. But the grading workflow that we're working for the instructor app will at some point help with providing grades and feedback on the spot, so that you might be looking at the student as the student is performing in a particular action, and you can actually record that and grade it directly on the app. So that will go back directly into the course. So there are a lot of workflows that can be enabled by using, you know, the mobile app. And so we still have 10 minutes to spare. So if there are any other questions, I think I covered most of the items that you guys wanted me to go into. So I uploaded a Moodle course here. It's a Stop Safety Traffic Optimum Protocol. Basically, since Moodle Rooms and Blackboard Learn are in the same family, when you export a course from Moodle Rooms, we can take most of the activities and upload them into Blackboard.
Did you know I was going to get in a car accident on the way here, and that's why you chose that one?
It was a premonition. It was a premonition.
I could have used that course. At 7 o'clock.
Exactly. So, as I said at the beginning of my presentation, even though we will automate the conversion of a lot of the content that you already have in Moodle Rooms, that does not necessarily mean that there's not going to be involvement from faculty. And this this is true for BlackBoard Learn, we're in the same family, we're cousins, but it's true for any other. I mean, please do not think that it's going to be 100% seamless, okay?
Do you mind going back into the stop
Yeah.
course?
There's some items in here that have not been converted.
Yeah, those were SCORM packages.
Yeah, so SCORM packages, they can be uploaded into the course, but they're not part of the
Like a native course item.
exactly, yeah. So you can always upload the SCORM packages into any area of the course, right? So you can just say,
This was also had the personalized learning designer associated with it.
that is not standard.
Those settings don't carry over either.
No, I mean, you can facilitate some of the same functions through the adaptive release.
But you would have to build those. And again, that's a great example of things. I mean, all learning management systems, although they all kind of do the same thing, they have different ways of implementing them. And even though we helped create the standard, which is common cartridge, which enables kind of transitioning content from one LMS to the other, it still will not bring the same thing. Like for instance, an example of Learn is conversations around items. I mean, that's a feature that's built into Learn. And if you want to take that conversation and import that into Voodoo Rooms, that there just doesn't go with it, right? Because there's no equivalent. So those are the things that, yes, we can say we convert 80% of the content, but then that 20% might require some significant work. And I'm not saying this to discourage you from moving to Ultra. I would love you guys to use Ultra because I think it's a great environment. It's really user-friendly and intuitive. But I want to be really clear that, I mean, I'm not selling something magical here, right? You can convert content, but it's going to require time. Does that make sense? Super honest here. Any other questions? Did you guys like it? You like where we're going with this?
We hope to make it a really tough decision between us and us. But, yeah. Good stuff. You guys like it. Anything we didn't cover, like just big broad areas? No.
As far as like browsers, is there one preference?
We really like Chrome and Safari. I'm sorry, Chrome and Firefox.
Safari and Windows are all pretty good, but most of the internet are Chrome and
Yeah, and we use the standard, and we try every time there's a new release for Firefox or Edge or any browser, we test it out, and we try to make it as user friendly in any of the environments. However, not all vendors have the same approach to holding a standard. So, I mean, sometimes they will come up with something new that will kind of change the interface a bit, but we like to keep the latest 3 versions inside our certification or certified, browsers. That's what we want to accommodate. Yeah.
Maybe this question is with admin, but let's say we do college does go with you guys. How soon, like, will we have like a few months to play around with it, or
It's up to you guys. You guys set the schedule for transition. Like some schools like, we want a year, we want to do pilots and training. Some schools are like, we do this in 90 days. They're like, you pay the line.
I think you were talking more about like new features in the environment.
No, I'm
that's
just saying,
coming
like,
out.
let's say, we're gonna get a new one, but like, I don't wanna get it, and next week I have to learn it in my class,
Yeah.
I can answer this question. If we choose to move, it would be in the 2019 mark. So the timeline's on that SharePoint site. So if you go to the hub and navigate to the left-hand side, you can see a large timeline, because we want to have time where we pilot, so everyone will be up to speed with a small group, and then do another pilot so we can train, so we have a decent transition period.
Yeah, which is really ideal.
Yeah.
You're a year and a half out, you know what to expect, lots of time for communication, no matter who you go to. You can train, you can do course conversions, they'll probably give you early access. Really, probably any more than that, you're probably wasting time, and that's a really pretty ideal schedule.
the storage limit for 50 years old were converted?
So in our traditional,
How does it work?
yeah, in our traditional environment, we, in our old, like, in our learn managed hosted, which is our data centers, we did have hard limits, well, not like hard limits, we had
No, we never had that.
yes, hard in the sense that like you bought a certain amount, like we want a terabyte, we want 5 terabytes, 100 terabytes, whatever it is. For storage, bandwidth, consumption, and users, with SaaS, it's based on FTE. So like you license for how big your school is, you're done. We don't come to you and like, you're over a terabyte, or you're, you know, you have more users, if you license for the FTE size of your institution. And I don't think we have a limit that I've ever run into. We have some pretty big schools.
Yeah, you can set that up as an administrator. You can say, I want courses to be within 200 megabytes or.
Just a concern that you guys want to have control, or you're worried about us going, hey, you kind of buy another gigabyte. Maybe both. Maybe both. Yeah, so we won't come to you and be like, you're over on storage. But often you guys like, we have a course that's, I don't know what's your big course, 4 gigs, 10 gigs, 20 gigs. So as an administrator, you can say, we want you to keep it. The size, you can manage that.
There is a store limit if you have a hospital. Let's say you have a course and it's 40, can you restore it?
Yeah.
I don't think we ever restore limit.
No,
We have
no.
some pretty crazy big, Learn's an old product, like we're really good at this. We have schools that, like, I think I've seen in 30 gigs, like one of the large ones I've come across.
Back and I've been using BlackBoard Learn for the last 17 years. So back in 2008, an average course size was around 15 megabytes. But that was before YouTube. That was before a lot of the tools that we have
I
now.
have a picture.
Yeah, now the average course size is more than 150 megabytes. You upload a presentation, and that's like 70 megabytes just right there. One PowerPoint presentation, right? So, I mean, it's not unusual to see courses that are 1 gigabyte or 2 gigabytes.
Maybe not best practice. Like,
It makes for a more complicated course, yes. For students, especially if they're, they have a data plan that's limited.
Yeah, I mean, as an institution, you should probably come up with a content storage strategy, like for all our multimedia accounts are to be hosted in our own web server, are they YouTube EDU, are we streaming from Google Drive, are we a Google Drive institution, are we a Microsoft institution? And so like, it's a strategy to decide that, and then we can support it. However, you put it all on a hard platform.
Are there any like archival solution that can connect directly with the 50 sites or whatever?
For content, for like multimedia.
Yeah, if we wanted to do archival, like when I got this role, the community college here keeps copies of all time courses since they started.
Yeah, we do rolling course archives and a redundant SaaS environment for the course. But if you wanted to have, I think we have pretty good multimedia integrations with big storage, so Google Drive, Box,
And you can
Microsoft.
connect that directly to the.
Yeah, so I did show this before. So right now in this environment, I've connected it to OneDrive, but that's Dropbox, OneDrive.
That's what you said before, right?
Yes.
I'm talking about for the administrator as well.
So there's two ways that you can do this. You can either connect a personal account, which is Dropbox or something that you're using that's not institutional, or the administrator can connect it to the institutional office license, right? And that does require a bit more configuration in the background. I mean, this one, I can just connect any account I have and I add my own personal password and that's it. Yeah, so all the different vendors have different levels of where we are in terms of the integration. Some integrations are more sophisticated than others. Some are just simply, oh, they're connected, so I click in here and it's going to show up my folder, right? Some of them,
You're talking about one course or you're talking about site admin?
the whole site, yeah. So
We're 365.
Oh, okay.
How good is the integration?
So right now, it is just maintaining the credentials to log into your OneDrive account. But we're hoping that in the future we can get tighter integration with Outlook or with Word, or just like when I was going over the Google Drive, the Google Documents integration. Hopefully we can get to that point. A good example is Dropbox. When you click on a Dropbox document, it will take you into the Dropbox shared document, and it allows for discussion to happen in there, and add edits and register all the changes. But that's because of the partnership that we have with Dropbox. We also have partnerships with Google and Microsoft, but those are at different stages of implementation.
Any of these other solutions rather than this side will allow me as an administrator to move or archive the accounting from the like back to the Dropbox or Google out of the
Out of it, no. We're looking more into functionality for the instructor, not necessarily the administrator.
He's trying to archive all course.
Well, what they're doing here is at the end of every quarter, they grab all the final backups of both and they just archive them. We now would archive them on a different right? It'll be a lot easier if they would like we can read it. From the cloud to the cloud somewhere.
Is the primary objective of that, is it, so do you have a record of the course activity for like grade challenges, or they go back into something? Or is the primary objective that instructors can go, oh, I have a really good asset in a prior section of 101. I'd really like to grab that music.
That's probably a question for Bruce.
A little bit of both, but for sure, the degree, that's, but also instructors, we get requests, yeah, you go back and look at that.
We also have,
All right, so a little bit of both.
we also have courses that maybe run once every 2 years.
Oh yeah, so it's been a while. It's not like last semester. This
Right.
semester. So you can do strategies for that. One, you can see old courses, right? So you can go back in and like see your course from 2 semesters ago, copy it, see a course activity. Like we maintain up to a point those archives of courses automatically. There's no reason to try to snapshot stuff out of it. And then most faculty maintain their own little database of things they love, whether that's in OneDrive or Drive or whatever. And so having a really tight integration with those well-known repositories of files and data is really the most requested functionality for faculty to say, I want to easily take a PowerPoint or a photo or something and drop it in where I want it. If I'm not just doing a course copy, like if it's a course copy function, I just want to easily find an old course, copy it, and then tweak it for the semester. I want to maintain a repository of information. I really want to have a good integration with whatever our school's married to, which sounds like pretty high for you guys. If this school is supported and kind of set up around Microsoft, they'll probably be able to.
This solution, it wouldn't work if we didn't have to meet all the previous courses. And that's why we do due to the size limit. It has to go as an admin.
Sure.
Download those and delete them, so the imports not an option because of.
Yeah, you can't go back. Like, how far what's your archival strategy now? How far back do you guys retain courses? 1 semester, 2 years, 10 years? 10 years?
Everything.
Everything.
Okay, so that's changed. Some people never had to come up with an archival strategy, and then you get to a point where you're like, now we have to figure this out. And it's usually driven by student experience, program length, and then federal requirements or state requirements. Where you're like, we have to keep grade activity for 2 years for challenges. That's either part of our policy or part of their policy. Beyond that, we get rid of it. Some people have a 4-year nursing program where they're like, those nurses need access to their course from year 1, but they're coming up to their NCLEX exam. So now our archival policy is that we need to cover the program. But it's not usually good practice to be outside the bounds of those things. Like, you don't want 20 years worth of data. It's just bad for everybody. So you guys have to put some thought. If you go to any provider, you're gonna have to put thought around what is relevant versus bloat. And that may be a year active and then an archive for 2, 3, 4 years, but it's probably not.
Yeah, if you have a short term, like you're saying, like a 4 year, we probably could put them in storage and just delete anything that goes over that limit.
Yeah.
But to keep all the records, we have to download them locally.
Yeah, you're keeping a physical drive. So what you're doing now is you're getting your managed hosted Moodle, putting on a physical drive, sending it to you, and you're shelving it. If you want to go back 12 years, you're like, pull that thing off the shelf, just send it to us or send it to file stuff, right?
No, I'm just going over it myself.
Yeah, so you put them on your machine now.
Yeah, when I do that, I just do it. I don't have to put.
Yeah, nobody in cloud is really physically shelving course archives anymore. Like, this is a philosophical change from, we own this server thing in our shop and have figured out, so we manage hosted, we have to figure out archives. Now you're in the cloud, all these problems go away.
Yeah, so in terms of managing courses, so there are several things that we can do, and depends on the kind of workflow that you guys want to enable for faculty. So I have a list of my courses here, and you can see on top it says current courses, upcoming courses. So the way this interface works is that if I have a course that's upcoming for the next term, but I'm not teaching, it will appear on my right side. And if it's a course from previous terms, it will appear on my left side. So you can navigate on those courses. Now you can have all of those in there, but you can also do either, you can say, hey, this one, I just don't want to see it in my list. I want to have it, but I don't want to see it, you hide it. Right? So you hide that from view, so it's no longer there. When you hide something here, that means that it will not show up in the stream as well. So if there's any item in there that actually has a date, it will not show on the screen. You can. So if you select here on the filter on the right, you can see either all courses or just courses that are hidden from me. So that's where it is.
That's another question. The last time I've done something similar to this, and we get so many questions about why.
Where is my course?
Well, no, why the instructor was going to not customize this area, like move something up and down.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty common frustration for students and faculty in different LMS experiences because it gets bloated fast. Like, I did a lot of my school through online, always using LMS, and like, after a while, I was like, all right, where's this? All right, you spend a lot of time trying to find something where your current feed is bloated with old stuff. So I like the management feature here.
Can courses be imported from external databases, colleague?
The enrollments report?
So enrollments, yes. Yeah, so we have a bidirectional integration, so you can, and it can be as complicated as one. You can bring in only instructor data and student data, and then just basically enroll it in the courses. You can have it so that courses are automatically created from templates. You can say, okay, for this course that's now new for this term, build it from this master course template, and then enroll students. You can also set, if you have in colleague, if you have, let's say, a particular set of grades that have to be in there, let's say final grades, midterm, and attendance, right? You can have it so that those columns are actually created in BlackBoard courses and are locked so that instructors cannot change it. So there's always like a reference between your SIS and your LMS. So you can bring as much information as you want from the SIS. You can also determine which system owns the information. So let's say that you bring in the email for the student from the SIS, and you don't want the student to be able to change that because that's the you know the official email that the student has provided to the school. So you can have it so that even if they have the email in BlackBoard Learn, they cannot change it. If they want to change it, they have to go into the registrar, so go in and change that information, and that will be reflected. So again, all those workflows depend on your business rules. Then grades. You can have grades be sent back on a day-to-day basis into your SIS, or they can happen every week or every month. You can set it so that instructors can, highlight the grades they want to send, or you can set it up so that only those columns can be sent. So again, that workflow, we call that a grades journey, right? Because it goes from the SIS into the LMS and then back into the SIS. So we can help set that up in the system. I have
your world in the back. You guys have questions about that?
Is there when they set the grades, how was the instructor do when they left it blank or didn't send it or skipped it or missed it?
Yeah, so.
Is there something that comes up to them and says, you didn't submit a grade for this?
I don't know, yeah. And also yesterday we had a question of like, they should enter a letter. If they enter a number, we tell them they can't enter a number.
Yeah.
And the grade integration is done. Quite often.
You guys run the sync.
It depends on how you want,
Like
when you
once an
want.
hour, I think it's run now.
Oh, wow.
Because we have 2-week courses, 1-week course, 3, 5.
Yeah.
10.
Correct.
So it's run.
Yeah, so the frequency depends on how you want it to happen. Now,
So let's say they graded every student but 2, and submitted those grades for every student but 2 of them. Is there some kind of notification to the instructor after they've submitted their final grade that you missed these students?
Any course grades, final grades?
Yes.
currently it doesn't have, it only lets you know that you have some students left to grade.
And how is that?
So if you see here, so these are all the activities in here. And you can see that there are 3 to grade, 2 to post, 1 to grade, 12 to post. That's about it.
All graded.
So that one below there, right, there it says all grades, that means that's, oh, that tells you the whole class is graded.
Yes,
For that assignment, I
for that assignment.
think you guys are asking end of course, like,
We're asking final grades.
So the final is it's the calculation that is ongoing.
so they want to know that the grades should already push back into the SIS at the end of the course.
Yeah. Yeah, to only get the function case,
Like the instructor enters final grade.
Yeah.
Will it still show that they have people to grade then?
I think that answer is going to depend on a little bit deeper dive, because I could give you, like, you want to know how it works in ILP with Evolution. So I think maybe what we should do is.
are you using ILP?
Yeah.
Are you going to use?
They're using currently the ILP block.
Okay, well, ILP has its own set of rules. It is not the Great Journey protocol. So ILP is a bit more rigid in terms of how they want those to look like. I'm sure you're aware of that. That does require a separate conversation.
Yeah.
Now, ILP is integrated to BlackBoard. I mean, actually, I think it was first integrated to BlackBoard and then Moodle, as far as I know, but I might be mistaken. Yeah. I mean, it does work. I have some clients that are doing that.
Well, currently, when they do grades, they, first of all, we have to enter them, then they can, apparently make a choice as to whether they're putting letter grades or percentage grades in. And then, they have to submit them. But they can submit partial rosters and then go back in and grade.
Change them.
And they cannot change grades once they've submitted them, but they can go back in there
And add new ones.
and add more students that they didn't grade previously. But there doesn't seem to be any indication, unless to them, that you need to submit letter grades only and you skip the student business, right? That's the portion that I wanted to know.
Yeah, so,
And
yeah.
do they, and they also have to populate their grades, which apparently that's a hidden function because they don't get that either. I just wanted to know how clear the grade book was to, and how interactive it was with the instructor to tell them, you haven't submitted this student is blank.
Yeah.
Now, you must do letter grades. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, so
That experience might actually live in the ILP product, our product.
it is more of an ILP. So the ILP does not surface on the LMS side, which is complicated.
It may be very similar to what you do today, because that experience is developed and owned by Evolution, not us. So it's probably different because you're mapping something slightly different. It's probably very similar.
So, from your experience, there are schools that are skipping the ILP block altogether.
This is me as an independent person from BlackBoard, so this is not BlackBoard's opinion.
Good disclaimer.
It's a disclaimer, yes. I have several clients in the United States who are in the process of implemented ILP or have implemented ILP. What I find that is almost always the case is that they do not implement all features in ILP. Some of them, they do enrollments, but not grades. Some of them do grades, but not enrollments. Some of them do portal, but nothing else. Almost none of them do all of, like, I would say, yeah, I haven't seen a client that uses all the features in ILP. They usually go through challenges because the system, the ILP system is very rigid in terms of how they implemented their integration. It makes sense from a technology perspective because they're trying to build something that supposedly should work with all LMSs. Also, the problem or the challenge that I find is that all of the business rules that students have, or that institutions have, I'm sorry, are very dissimilar, right? So if you want to build something that works and accommodates for all institutions, it has to be fairly complex and very dynamic and flexible. So far, I haven't seen that with ILP. So, also, again, my own personal view is that what Illusion is trying to accomplish with this is try to add another layer of abstraction between the student and the learning activity, because they want to own those, I apologize for this term, but they want to own those eyeballs, right? The students. Let's say 5 years ago, the LMS was 90% of the time that students were interacting with the system and the institution, right? I mean, once they go into Moodle, they know where their course is and they don't want to go anywhere else. Illusion is more of like a portal system, or, you know, so they do have grades, they do some things, but usually most of the activity, learning activity, happens in the learning management system. So to a certain extent, they want to be able to have students go through the portal before going into the learning management system. Now, is that a good idea? It could be, right? However, it does add an extra layer of complexity to how students really want to interact, because then you have to think about your learning management system, and then you want to think about your portal and all those other, you know, systems. And they haven't been doing it for 20 years like we have, right? So that is my take on it as an education technology expert. That is my perspective. They're trying to go into a market for a functionality that they're not necessarily prepared to go into. Does that make sense? Now, does it work? It does work if you want to do on the fly enrollments, on the fly, you know, all those things like event-driven integrations. Yes, adding extra layers might really make it more.
Something that you mentioned, you said some institutions are not doing everything, and you said portal, we need the shell itself that get created.
So if you go into, again, I'm not an expert on ILP, but ILP does, it's called an intelligent learning platform, because supposedly you log into this mobile portal or a web portal, and you can see as a student all the courses that you're enrolled in, and all the activities that you're in, and all the grades that you have in. And you click on the activity, and supposedly that is going to take you directly into the learning management system that's behind it, or that's provided.
Normally, you're talking about the BlackBoard, or you're talking about shells, right?
No, I'm talking about an extra web page that they have to log in before going into BlackBoard. So they log into the ILP, they see, oh, my name is, you know, that, and I have these courses, and this is my schedule. And I click on the schedule, and that'll take me into Learn. So you know what I mean? An extra layer of abstraction. They want to have their own schedule, they want to have their own system, they want to have their own portal. It does kind of fit into a logical place in the ecosystem, because if you have different learning management systems or different learning platforms, then you want a unified view. But most schools, they only have one LMS, right? So they don't have to unify it. If you have two or more than one, yeah, exactly. But most, like 99% of the institutions I know only have one LMS. So adding another one in there, I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, event-driven integration, that's perfectly, especially if you have very short, narrow terms. I mean, that really does make sense. But apart from that, I don't. And again, disconnected from BlackBoard. Right? So, I went over this. This is now the open session.
No, you're into IT, ID, registrar.
Oh, well, I guess that's what's going on.
Yeah, that's what this
Please
audience
continue.
is.
Yes. So,
So is what you showed us, is that out of box? You didn't show us, you can have it customized to do this.
no, everything that you saw is what you'll see out of the box.
You're bring your own students. We actually like to beg people.
Yeah, that's why my reports are not that enticing.
We can't show you roadmap stuff, but I don't think we've showed any like to be to come.
No, I mean, when there was something that was relevant about the roadmap, I talked about it, like, video feedback and things of the sort. I mean, one thing that I'm really excited about is that we're adding some analytics features around discussion forums. Sometimes, so when we're the traditional way of looking at activity reporting is how many time the students, how much time the students spend in here, how many posts do they have, how many words they have in the discussion forum, or how many clicks. We understand that faculty really don't have the time to go into that. They really don't care about that information because it doesn't really provide any meaningful, input into how they're teaching their courses. So for discussion forums, like you saw a bit about, tests, grade distributions, submission attempts, and things like that. But for discussions, we're actually using machine learning algorithms to look into the actual postings by students. And we have a way to determine the type of contribution. So is this students being argumentative? Is students using more informational? Is being more informational? Is the student not being participative? So we're using different aspects of communication, and we're providing that to the instructor, so they can have that information alongside the student. We also give them, a possible grade. So the way that you have graded participations for other students with this particular profile has been around this area. Things that will not automatically grade, but will inform your grading workflow. Does that make sense?
So like you have 100 new discussion posts, the same thing a long time. But like the system can say, what you're really looking for is students who mention several key topics, reference others, are about this size, and use good grammar and structure, like this language processing and some of the technology AI behind it. Goes, yeah, this looks like they should probably get like an 85 out of 100. You can go, nah, it's a 70. But it starts you out with this like assessment of participation, which has never been something that's been there for discussion posts. And I think it's just breeding more efficiency to the instructor who just doesn't have a lot of time in courses because they.
And then we're also building in things like the rubric when you're grading an assignment or when you're grading a discussion, right? You can use a rubric, which is really important. But the rubrics that we're building are going to be automated, so that you can set specific thresholds. So this criterion is the student needs to post 5 times. If the student posts 5 times, then automatically the student gets that one, right? Or the student has to post this amount of words. So you can configure that rubric so that automatically certain criteria within that rubric get calculated from actual participation by students, right? So that is where we really want to take the platform. We want to automate as much as possible and also provide feedback and data back to faculty in a way that makes sense within the context of teaching and learning, and not just activity reports like clicks.
So BlackBoard for both of our products actually has a team of data scientists. It makes a difference if you're looking for a partner that's some really cool, thoughtful stuff around research, whether it's student success or surfacing small analytics. It's really cool to see a company that we invest more in R&D than any other company in the space by like a huge factor. We own a data science team that are amazing, and they publish.
And it's not a small data science team, so it's
really good. So like we have, I talked yesterday about Arizona State, and my alma mater, somebody we're really close to. with schools like that that are really well respected in the areas of data that ask us to come work with them, share our research on the learning perspective as well. So it's, I think, pretty well respected.
There was a question?
Yeah, like, when you tell us about the training support, like for students, instructors, and inspectors,
Sure.
that's what.
So as you might expect, we have an offering of training and support, right? So we have online training, we have face-to-face training, we have end user training as well. So we usually do the trainers approach, which is we get instructional designers and faculty that will be then, or trainers that will then train internal faculty. We have self-guided online courses, and we have also instructor-led online courses as well. So it depends on how you want to transition into the platform. Now, if in the case of moving into BlackBoard from another LMS, right? So we do have services around the transition, but through implementation, we have a service that we call academic technology planning. So academic technology planning goes over the whole project. So it's a project management process, right? So it follows the implementation from zero to, the kickoff day. And it does go into administration training, it goes into faculty training, it goes into instructional design training, and then into deployment of that training to faculty and depending on, your project and how you want it, right? So around administration training, well, it's everything around integration, authentication, management of the interface, and of course, all those user management and all the features inside the tool. Faculty training, it's a 3-day trainers engagement where they go over every aspect of the functionality, and they will help you build exemplary courses from the ground up. And we use our exemplary course program to inform how we deliver that training to faculty. The exemplary course program is every year we bring in courses from all of our client institutions, and it's an actual peer review process in which faculty themselves decide which one is the best online course, and from those best practices we basically provide that back to our clients through our academic technology process. But again, that we can have let's say a generic training, because if you want to just go over every single aspect, or we can tailor that depending on how you want to focus your teaching and learning online, right? So if you say, hey, I'm not going to go into asynchronous, I'm going to go only into synchronous, we can do that as well.
You guys had discussions about how you would want your list card course, like an ideal state if you make a really difficult, at least not difficult change, but it's a big change. You don't have to solve crazy solvable math problems that work for everybody, for instructors, for admin, for registration. And so probably cart before the horse, but we can come at this from very hands off. Here's information, and we'll help you get there. We come at this from very hands off. Put somebody on site, build something for you, we can teach you to build it, we can give you documentation. So I think you can like the integration with the grade stuff. And so this stuff, you have a little bit of a spectrum, but the baseline is really good. We have really good help sites, really good videos for faculty to learn stuff. A lot of the product tutorials are like linked directly from the experience. The product from a user perspective, the first time you had a course, it gives you like a tour, like Google tours, right? First time you, from instructor, build something new, kind of like, hey, let me show you around. And so friendly, people are new to it, and then we have a spectrum of like help. You guys can say, kind of leverage. We really want a lot of help for faculty because we feel like it's big. Then maybe for very great integrations, a medium amount of help. But our support guys are really sharp, and we just really want you to get the documentation and help them speak really fast. So whatever you need there. But the baseline is really good. So. Good question, though. I think you should ask that of anybody. It is a big work here. So anybody you choose, if you choose to change, you should understand how they support you with variation. ever have to change elements. If you do, send it to us. Help us good. I hope you never have to
If you want to change, you can change it to BlackBoard.
Yeah. Have you guys ever changed elements during your time here? Like an upgrade, maybe not like Angel or Boodle, right? Oh, we remember that in your dreams. Have you guys ever changed an SIS by your time? That was probably pretty difficult
Yes.
experience.
Left and registration.
You're the two survivors. Those are two technologies that are big armor.
Yeah.
You touched on it earlier. Can you speak more to gamification elements in BlackBoard's looking at implementing into Ultra?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're going to do, and again, this is part of the roadmap. So remember when I showed something around this, right? So we can hide it, show and hide on a specific date, or conditionally make that available, right? So the idea here is that right now we're making things appear or disappear based on behavior within the course. But in the same way, we're going to use the same mechanism to add achievements to, so you have completed this, and that, so this is your achievement, or you have logged into the course this many times, and so this is your achievement. So providing kind of the same mechanism, but tying it to student behavior so that, you can get those kind of, trophies or badges or whatever you want to call them. Also, so remember when I was looking into items, each item that you add or each activity, it can be tied to goals, right? So this goal and standard right here. So this goals mechanism will help us tie into a progress. You're familiar with the progress bar, so that a student can see. You can either have one single progress bar, or you can have different. You can call them competencies, if you will, and each student can see how he or she is acquiring those different competencies in a graphical way. So those are the elements. Now, ultimately, and we can always achieve gamification through adding, scoring or point scoring or, other, kind of traditional approaches. But for us, gamification is a way to provide feedback into performance directly to the course and tie into automated responses from the course itself, so that you can, create that game mechanism inside the course, not necessarily going an extra step, which is creating a game.
Right.
Does that make sense? So for us, gamification is more of like an application of a teaching or learning technique into a course, not creating a game.
Are you guys considering badges or awards that are backed by some kind of achievement, micro achievement in a course? That's often one of the first parts of an institutional gamification that we're saying, like, we want to start to establish a badge, right? The term the last couple of years where students will gain either a micro certification, like, hey, you're really good at circuits in this IT class, or you got top phlebotomy badge where you're drawing blood, whatever that is. That's an I don't know, that makes sense. I like people that can hit me on my base and try. I don't know about you guys.
Sales executive, very competitive, right?
I'm like, oh, I'm not bleeding to death. So badges are important. That's one thing. We also support a lot of really great partners that are moving in the area of gamification, and so often you're going to see these experiences that are gamified and deep learning, like remediation experiences, are often built by content designers. So you want like big publishers and then the small publishers to have an environment that is open to them, supports all LTI, allows them to create some really unique stuff. And we do that. Most of the big ones support the LTI library. We go beyond LTI, which is good. But most of those experiences you'll see from publishers. Yeah, I think small analytics are a lot of that. But like in course activity, how am I trending? How am I, I'm competitive, so I want to see how my peers are doing.
Big words.
Yeah, I want to be like, here's me against average, and I just want to be above that line, I mean, top of that line, I want to be above my peers. So. That may not work for somebody.
It would be interesting to see if there are any like, students are able to sign a waiver or something and actually go in a course where they can actually see others. Yeah, I mean,
it would I think for a certain personality type, it'd be very dismotivational, and for a certain personality type, it'd be very motivational. There's some cool companies, like if you guys looked at Newton, and there's a bunch of companies that are doing personalized or gamified content generation with partnership.
So on the WYSIWYG editor, when you clicked on the plus sign on the far right-hand side, there's something BlackBoard open, something along that.
content market.
Yeah,
So
what was the BlackBoard open?
the BlackBoard Open Content Initiative. So we created a few years back multi-platform learning object repository. It used to be called Explore, basically cross-platform learning object repository, and we changed that to just basically BlackBoard Open Content. So that is a SaaS-based cloud repository that's independent of your environment, but it can be connected to your environment. The idea was or is that you can go there and find Creative Commons open content that you can just attach or bring into your course without having to pay for the content. So basically open educational resource. But also the idea is that if you have a school that is using Moodle rooms here and a school that is using Blackboard Learn here, they can basically share resources regardless of which LMS are using, right? So that's the idea behind the open content.
Can they share entire courses and then go all the way down to the granular?
So they can share, so they have one thing called learning module, which is basically, it can be from an entire course, which is a collection of items and activities, or it can be just a few content items and a discussion, or basically any combination of items inside that learning module. And it could be just one, let's say a web page, or it can be just a test with several questions. Or so it can be an individual item, but it can also be a big package, right? So it depends on what faculty want to share themselves. As an institution, you can also decide whether or not faculty can go out there and bring resources. Also, you can decide if you want faculty to actually share through it or just consume. You can set the level of copyright that's attached to the content. So you can set it to be instructor defined, or you can have an institution defined copyright to it. So there are many, so it's a whole conversation in itself, but the idea is that it's a way in which faculty can go out there and get free resources and map them to courses and share their own resources with institutions. Of course, it does work, but it only works. And I didn't. I don't know if I have that here.
I saw it when you were in there earlier.
Yeah, it just.
Seems like a market where nobody's really owned it yet. Like Merlot, really good. It's really good. We tried, some publishers trying, but I don't feel like we're usually centralized around a place or a way to do this. So I think we'll continue to try, and others will try to garner participation. It's just not like an app store. Good learning, but I don't know, there's some pretty good ones. It just doesn't feel like everybody got behind one of that.
In yours, is there ability to rank the resources or leave? Because that's the biggest problem with OER right now. There's just a pile of it, and the quality's harder to gauge.
So being in education technology for a while, I remember when the whole thing was learning objects, and then the whole metadata attached to the, it has always been a kind of a library science problem, I think, because it's how you classify all of that and how you make those available and actually be usable. And as you say, how can you rate the quality of the content as well? It is very complicated, but we do have all those features. So this is, I actually went into the open content system, so you can create your own, right? You can you have access to your courses directly from here. We have channels, and you can subscribe to a channel based on particular interests, right? So if you go into here, you can then you have some content partners that have provided, huge chunks of, objects in the system, but you can then also look into a particular type of, let's go into science, so you can see the resources there. You can see comments from faculty that have, so you can always rate. As you can see here, some of them have not been rated, but if you go into this virtual lab, there you go. Oh, yep, I'm going to proceed at my own risk. So this is the item here. Right, so I'm not familiar with it, and it's been a while since I've been to school, so it might not be the best, but I can just select here, and let's say add this to my astronomy, and I'm going to add it to the resources folder section. Just click add. And then so that has been added into my course. If I click go back to course, hopefully I haven't destroyed it. So this is the item that I've added. So students just come in here, click, and that launches the, of course they do get the same Java alert because Java is the devil or something. But yeah, so basically now in this case, it's just one lesson or one item, but it can be a whole, set of chained activities. I'm sorry?
To go back to the homepage.
To go back to the homepage, in this case, so I can just go here and just have that go away, right? So the resource opens inside its own slider. So because the whole thing with, dealing with LTI connections is that they either pop up in the same screen or they go into another screen, or so it makes navigating difficult. So those things open in here, so into that slide panel. So, I mean, it does have a functionality that you want, but you close that and you're back into your course. It's the same tab.
It's quite similar to SCORM or course trail, standard.
It's just like, yeah, it's just like any other item. So if you go into, the item that I created internally, like this,
Another slider.
it's just a slide.
I think for accessibility reasons as well, we did this, and then the reader kind of interprets the ability to go home or to other panels.
Yeah, so some LMSs, including Learn, they kind of built a concept where everything is kind of one page, and you add, and then the page kind of starts getting too long. That is kind of difficult for screen readers to navigate through. So whenever you click into an item here, just like the one I was showing you, it will appear in its own pane inside, or in its own kind of window inside. So then you can have a single view of the document and then have the screen reader go through that. So it's easier to have this than to have all the text inside one single long page. Now, there's people leaning on both sides. Some people would like to have everything on one page. Some people like it this way. It's just, I mean, ultimately, because we do build everything with accessibility in mind, we decided to build this way. It was easier for students to navigate.
We had a lot of ally questions yesterday. I don't think it's a much different experience, but it's really great at BlackBoard Learning.
Yeah. That's the one I created today. Yeah, So as you can see, I've inserted files and like a video and a file, and they all kind of go in that way. Again, it also makes it easy for screen readers to go through the content. Of course, you can always insert images directly into the text in here. If you don't want that kind of approach, you can always just click here, add an image or a video, right? But it's probably easier to just drag and drop that in. Yep. If you want to bring in content from other courses, let's say that you want to import a package, you click here, and you can select from, in this case, OneDrive, because that's how I have configured this. The content market, that's external providers, or you can import a file from your computer, just select one, upload. So, and then if you want to bring in just copy from one course to another, and you say, okay, I want to bring in something from English composition, and I want to bring in just that. And then it just brings that over from that course. I don't, where did I put that? Well, it's in there. So any more questions around IT and integrations?
How do you knock out the quote?
So you can go, if you want the instructor to do it, they can go in here and then just basically export a course package. I have done that 3 times now. So you can export that basically creates another one of these packages. As you can see here, they're kind of attached to the dates when they were created. When you click that, you can download into your computer. Usually the backup of courses happens automatically. Well, the administrator does it. So as an administrator, you can group courses in several different ways, right? So let me go in there. Hopefully not confuse you too much. So administrators, they can either archive a whole term, or they can archive a subsection of courses. You can say all courses from the English department, archive those, or all courses from the previous term, archive those. Or you can make those unavailable and then archive those in bulk. So if I go into the admin panel, right, we have, exactly, you can do one at a time. And if you have more complicated requests, like I want to archive all the courses that are above 4 gigabytes and have no students enrolled in, or have been from this date and that. I mean, you can do a lot of things from the admin panel, but our support guys can do that for you as well. So you basically go in, create a ticket, and say, hey, I want these parameters to be taken into consideration, archive those. And they will do that for you. And you also, if you want to, you can request up to 4 times a year physical copies of your courses. So you can say, hey, here's my hard drive. I want everything in my platform to be put in that hard drive, send it back. And we can do that 4 times a year. I don't know what you can do with it. Yeah. I mean, it used to be a big deal like some years ago. You do it. If you don't want to do it, that's also fine. Yeah, but the data is your data. Also, I haven't talked about direct data access. So everything that we have in the production database, of course, it is your data. And if you want to have access to that data via, I don't know, just a query, just want to know everything that's in there, you can have access to a replica of the production database that's up to the, a minute, couple of minutes, like in terms of replication, and you can just basically query anything in the database. The database schema is open. We have all the documentation you need. It is an open database. Although it's designed by us and it's proprietary in that sense. All the information about the database is open. and I want to stress that out because it is not that if you ask for data, we're not going to export that and send it to you in a different format. You can actually access the data in the format in which it is used in the database, in the system, so that if you have a data warehousing solution and you want to look into clicks or you want to look into a particular aspect of activity, you can get that, right? So actually as it's being used. I mean, it's a full-grown database. We set up the VPN connection, the credentials, and that's all you need. Of course, we do have full RESTful API implementation. So if you go into developer blackboard.com, so you can obviously explore and manage all the APIs there or get information. There you go. So you have, you know, all the different objects in there, all the different methods you can call on them. If you want to build your application, all you have to do is basically register. You register your application. If you have your own environment, you basically, what you do is you create a user within the environment, and all your applications will run under that user's credentials. So that's how you can control, with that user, you can control which aspects of the database or which aspects of functionality are actually accessible by to that application. So it's a great way to do it. By registering in the developer program, you also will have access to your own test environment in which you can upload and test any sort of development that you have. So you don't have to either you know, have a separate environment or install another environment. So you basically can add your data in here. You create your own test instance and your own user that you can use to create your RESTful implementations, and then translate that into your own production environment. Now, if you do want your own institutional test environment, you can also, of course, provide that.
You guys do development, do you have people like building API integrations or doing custom development for middleware or your own stuff here? Most schools don't. Like you'll see really big schools that want to be builders do it. But you probably do have the folks in IR who love to have direct access to all the activity data.
Yes.
So that for their own reasons, they can farm and look at students and courses and this and instructors, outcomes and all that kind of stuff. But now they typically farm the SIS. So now they'll go and look like incoming, and it's like you have like date of birth, date of death information for the SIS. You don't know what happened in the middle. So sometimes you're higher people want to go farm this stuff.
So every time I come into this site, we have more APIs being developed. We have an event. We want to do it more than once a year, but we do it today. We do it yearly. It's a hackathon basically, where we bring in students from different institutions, and they're in there for 24 hours, and they build really cool applications, and all that we sponsor that activity with our client institutions. There's also the community site in which, I mean, of course, it's not a big community as Google communities worldwide, but you have access to all of the different Blackboard user groups. There are regional groups, there are national groups, and then of course it's open to anyone. There's communities for faculty, communities for students, community for administrators. Our own developers are actively engaged in the community itself. We use the community to feed into our development process. So we post our features, tell us what you want, and then we give that, provide that list to everyone that's in the community side. They get to vote. So that's how we kind of follow up the things that we want to focus on, and then that's how we inform our development process alongside a lot of other things, right? But I mean, we're really active in our community. I sometimes go in and answer some questions in there when I have something I can, share.
I don't know if this is a good thing to answer, but yesterday there was a lot of questions around, I don't know how this shows an ultra, so this may be any better. Taking a course into a new semester and adapting dates to the new semester versus manually resetting it.
Course rollovers.
Yeah, like automatic date updates or the options for which you're gonna be setting dates for the semester.
Yeah, so in Ultra, we don't have that interface yet, the course rollover. We do have it, it's in the background in there, so the code is in there, it just has not been surfaced in the course itself. It will be part, let me log out here. It is still not part of our immediate roadmap, so it's not gonna be here in the next month.
Because we'll be on this for a year anyway, so I think you'd be fine.
Yeah.
We do it in our existing non-ultra environment, we do it for years and years.
Yeah, so the code is in there in the background.
It's just bring me to this product.
Yeah, so the idea is that if you're teaching this course, for instance, and you go into the gradebook, so you have all these dates in here. So the idea is that we're going to be able to select either individual dates and just adjust the time, or just basically select all of them, and then we're going to have a calculator on top, and you can either select the new term, which will automatically shift all of the dates forward to the new term, or you can select a date delta. You can say move all the dates like 10 days into the future, or the previous start date was the 5th of January, the new start date is the 7th of September, just move them accordingly and it will do it. So the idea is all the activities are in here, and it's just going to be about just clicking, and this single interface will do all of that. But still far away.
Yeah, I think you guys will see this.
This is 2019, it's not 28.
We are at 11, just to be respectful of people's time.
Yeah, now, yes, thank you. And just one thing about date management, what I do, because I use the same course for my demos, and of course I have to be shifting the dates. What I do is that I go into the gradebook here, just because this is the way I like it. I mean, and I just select the activity, click edit, and then change the due date like that.
Which is basically your experience in middle rooms today. Right?
I mean,
you get a new course, you're just doing assignments and updating your role.
yeah. So it's a couple of clicks. We want to make that faster.
You also drag it off on the calendar.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I showed that a bit. Yeah. So once you have it, you just drag it off it to a new date. But sometimes if you want to go several months, that can be a lot.
Yeah, it's fun to Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, thanks for your question. Oh,
One more question. on
Sure.
single. This may have come up with the single sign-on, but you support the Azure single sign-on?
yeah. So we do CAS, we do Shibboleth, we do SAML basically.
Which I think Azure runs as a SAML
I don't know which.
/ I don't know which one it is.
I don't know if it's 1 point something or 2 or.
We have a lot of Microsoft shops. I work with Maricopa County Community Colleges, which is a pretty good job.
Dilution identity services on-prem, proxy, authenticate.
I wouldn't be concerned if you guys are with a weird LMS like, or weird SIS like Genzavar, or using some weird authentication server. You can work.
Right now, it doesn't work with Blue.
Yeah, I think you'd be okay. Well, if we find out specifically, we may even want to gather like version information or implementation information. If you want as a follow-up, yes, we've done it. Here's some examples of schools that we can probably do that.
Yeah, so the way that we implement authentication, it really, I think, I mean, again, I'm not super familiar with Moodle, but we have several providers. So what you could, so some schools might have one authentication provider for faculty and one for students, or several. So you add all of those providers, configure those communications, and then set up priority lists. So the way that it works is that it will go with the first one in the list. If that's not found, goes to the second one, and the third one, and then finally uses the in-house authentication, usually for administrators and whatnot. And then, just to pass out. Yeah. But I mean, so And it's a modular implementation, so we're constantly adding new protocols. And so, I mean, adding a new authentication method to us, it's not complicated.
It's not a school out there that doesn't want it, so it's pretty much everybody gets it one way or another. I don't really have a problem with this. There's configuration time, like usually our people, your people get together, you have to make it work, but I very rarely run into like we can't do it. So.
Yeah. This one is not set up for SAML, but I mean, LDAP.
Yeah, what's your experience today? Like, do you have separate login names and information, or do you sync them manually, or do you go to two portals?
All synchronized. So we have one login.
So it does work today, or it doesn't work today?
It works LDAP. You had to go fall back to LDAP to get it to work right.
Okay. Okay. So functionally, how's that different? It's when students are change their accreditation or their information at the Azure system, is it there a lag where otherwise it wouldn't be? There's still a single sign-on with LDAP today, right?
It's just the way they log in. When you go to Azure, we have to put our domain on the end. With LDAP, our LDAP site locally, you don't.
So we have some items in the help documentation around Azure Active Directory. So, yeah.
That issue was not from our end, it was from actually from Google. We had a team from Google that was helping us with it. They found out that the pointing from Google was not working.
Yeah.
So we had to inform the school. They said that this updates the current one that we have now, 3.3, that should fix the issue. But when I got the email, it just said they implemented tool that's troubleshooting for connectivity.
But no, fix it. It just
I didn't say that it fixed it, but I still didn't have a chance to go again. Right now.
Yeah.
But that's.
Yeah, I think there's a greater sphere of control for a product that we own versus Moodle, which we do own the implementation of it, but some of it is open source community, right? So we have less control over some of those tools that are community generated or otherwise, where we have a greater level of control, I think, over some of the experience that are. But there's fun benefits from the Moodle sides too, right? Like you have a huge community of people surfacing problems, cool things, building stuff random that they wanted. Probably benefits you to some. You guys use any other open source partners or anything else that's really affects users? Yeah. Not a lot of it.
It's one room. So
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
But there are some aspects of it that we say are core Google, right? Versus there's no delineation for learn of core learn versus our learn. So. You're right. Yeah, I mean, you don't pay us for Moodle. Moodle's free. You pay us to make it a little